JJ Singleton was diagnosed with colorectal cancer at age 27. He thought he had beat it, but 6 weeks later, it returned and metastasized. JJ is an incurable terminal patient now going on 7 years, and he has completed 121 rounds of chemotherapy. JJ is using his life to advocate and help others. JJ, thank you for coming on and sharing your story.
Thank you for having me. It is an honor to be here.
Well, I really appreciate it so much. It's not very often I get to interview someone who's going through it, and definitely not as long as you've been going through it.
Yeah.
So can you take us back to the beginning when you were first diagnosed and tell us what was going on in your life and if you had any symptoms?
Yeah, it was a 2015. I would just got kind of a promotion at work. I finally got over my post-college kind of partying, just going out, not caring stage of life. So I got, kind of determined. I was back in the gym, getting healthy. And it started about Memorial Day. I felt a throbbing in my abdomen. I was, an athlete my whole life, Southern kid. So I ignored the pain unless I needed to go to the hospital. So I thought, I was like, it'll get better. And throughout the summer, it just got progressively worse. And I did a CrossFit competition on August 1st of 2015. And then after that, my body crashed. Like, couldn't eat, couldn't drink. I was dehydrated every day, couldn't use the bathroom. And then finally, my mom made me go to the doctor because my skin was turning gray. I was losing so much weight and not drinking or eating anything. And by that time, you could see the tumor throb through my abdomen, like through my skin. I could hold my shirt there. So the doctor looked at me, got a CT scan. Yeah, that was all.
Had you lost?
Well, before 2015, I got up to 315 pounds. So I'd lost a lot of weight organically. But then probably the last part of that summer, I was losing 5-10 pounds a week. I was down to 240 on August 1st. And when I left the hospital October 1st, I was down to like 160.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
But
all right, so take us to, you were August, your mom convinced you to go to the hospital.
Yeah, end of August. It was Labor Day weekend. I went to the doctor on the Friday before Labor Day. Okay. Went to the hospital, CT scan. They scheduled me a colonoscopy that Tuesday because everything's closed on Labor Day.
Right.
So that Tuesday, I get the colonoscopy. I wake up, and instead of just one doctor there, there's about 8 different doctors and nurses in the room. And they said, you have a mass. And at that time, everything for the last 6 months of my life clicked into line. And I was like, it's cancer. Before they even said that, biopsied it, I was just like, it makes perfect sense now. Turns out it was cancer. And in 5 days, I was in the hospital getting surgery.
Okay. And it was a tumor in your colon?
Yes, it was once they removed it, it turns out it was a massive tumor. They had to remove 80% of my colon, about 36 inches of my small intestine.
What?
Yeah, if it had been about a quarter of an inch either way, I would have had to have an ostomy bag, but they were able to reattach it. Somehow, my doctor was amazing, but yeah, it was at that time it hadn't metastasized. They took out lymph nodes, and they said they think because I was, eating so healthy and losing weight and being there, that it kind of, my body fought it enough to keep it from spreading at that time. Maybe they don't know why it hadn't metastasized yet because it was so big.
So they do the surgery, they take out some lymph nodes, they think they have clean margins. Did they recommend any treatment after surgery, or did they say, hey, you're good to go?
No, I got recommended to go down to Duke, the cancer center at Duke, because I was so young and there was no real family history of it. Okay. So they did the whole genetic testing, went to Duke, and they recommended 12 rounds of just Folfox. That was like baseline chemo for colon cancer, just to make sure we got everything. Okay. And then at that time I learned through genetic testing, I tested positive for Lynch syndrome, which is why I have got cancer so early.
Right. Okay. So did you do those 12 rounds?
I did. I did the 12 rounds. It was tough. Chemo was horrible. Threw me, introduced things I'd never even thought of that your body could go through. But I did the 12 rounds, ended in the end of April of 2016.
Oh gosh,
And
we're the following year now. Okay.
yeah, and then it was 6 weeks after that, I went for my colonoscopy because I was going to have one yearly at that time. Everything was clean. That night I woke up and the same throbbing was in my abdomen. So I was at the doctor at like 6 o'clock in the morning waiting on him to pull in and being like, something's wrong again.
This is after your colonoscopy?
Yep. It was that same night. It was just, that was the first throbbing I felt again. And then, so over the next few weeks, test, biopsy, back down to Duke, learned that the cancer came back but moved to my abdominal wall and spread through lymph nodes throughout my body. And then they, did all the tests and stuff and said it's come back and it's incurable because it's not a solid tumor no more in my abdominal wall. They can't go in and cut it out or remove it. And it was resistant to the baseline chemo. So I started on the path of every cocktail of chemo they had FDA approved at that point over the next 6 months. None of them worked. The cancer was growing throughout my body at that time. And I applied and got approved for a clinical trial, which saved my life.
Tell us about that. A lot of people don't know about clinical trials.
Yeah, I didn't either. I thought I was going to be in a science experiment because all I'd ever heard of clinical trials is what you see in movies and TV shows and the fear that comes along. But I had no choice because it was basically go to hospice or try the clinical trial because there was nothing left to do. This was my last shot. And luckily,
did your medical team recommend the clinical trial?
Yeah, my oncologist in Asheville and the one at Duke, they work well together. Great. And they were going through the whole clinical trials to see which one my weird mutated tumors would allow me for. And they even worked it out to where I didn't have to go to Duke every 3 weeks to get it. They got it shipped up to Asheville.
That's amazing.
Yeah, they were amazing. But before I was able to start it, I got put in the hospital because the cancer grew around my stomach, the end of my stomach into my intestines and closed it off. So at that point, everything I ate just set my stomach until I threw it up. So I went through the next 450 days eating through TPN infusions. I wasn't able to eat food for 14 months.
Oh my gosh. Oh, God.
But
what was that like?
Yeah, that was probably the lowest point of my life right there because I was sitting in bed probably 22 hours a day. And the infusions would take 15 hours over the night, but I was on a pain pump too. And I had 2 drainage bags that everything that went into my mouth like liquid would just go straight out into the drainage bags. The intestinal fluid would just be there. So I couldn't do anything. And I just had to sit there, and it was mentally the toughest part. The only time I got to leave the house was pretty much to go to chemo or doctor appointments.
So where are you living at this point?
At this point, I'm living in my uncle's basement apartment, which is within a mile of everybody in my whole family. Okay. We live in a very small community, so pretty much my whole close family lives within 4 or 5 miles of each other.
Okay. And I take it, just with the circumstances you just described, that you were not able to go back to work.
No, when I first got diagnosed, my new job, I was an operations manager for my uncle's companies, which I focused mainly on. He ran convenience stores. I was a liaison kind of between the state and the underground tanks. So I'd have to go into the gas tanks and make sure nothing's leaking. And as soon as I got diagnosed, they're like, well, you can't be doing that while you're on chemo. So yeah. I went to short-term disability. Then I went back to work for the 6 weeks. And then when it came back, I was in such pain, I couldn't do anything at that point. So I'm on disability. And then with all the no eating and the tubes and I've been on that ever since.
Oh gosh. Well, I'm so glad you were able to get that, because so many people aren't, or the people who get it aren't actually sick. So I'm really glad that you were able to get that. So at what point were you able to get the feeding tube out, and why? What needed to happen?
Well, when I started the clinical trial, we were going through scans, and it stopped it from growing it right off the bat, and then it shrank it enough over the next 14 months to where I went back for this major, it's like a 10-hour major surgery where they had to kind of scrape a lot of stuff, cut a lot of like scar tissue and other things away, reroute. Like the name of the surgery is about 5 lines worth of stuff on the report that I can't pronounce any word of it. But pretty much they said they had to reroute and redo a lot of stuff in there. And then over time, I was able to start eating again.
Okay.
Yeah.
What was that like? Because I think we all take things for granted, right?
Yeah.
We take,
Oh yeah,
especially eating, right? What was it like to start eating again after not being able to really eat for 14 months?
yeah. I tell people all the time, like with the TPN, I didn't miss eating. Like I was never hungry. I never had a stomach ache because it was made specifically for through your blood to get you the direct nutrients you need. But mentally, you miss the taste, you miss taking that and just the motions of eating. And, you know, that it's a joy. It's, you know, but
in a community, right?
Yeah. I had to sit around for 2 Christmases and 2 Thanksgivings at my family's dinner table and watch them smell people cooking all the time and eating while I'm sitting there drinking like a glass of water.
What was that like?
It mentally, it made me not want to leave it. Like we had family dinners at my grandparents' house like almost every Sunday.
Oh.
It made me where I didn't want to do that.
Yeah, of course.
Just because I missed eating, I missed, you know, being a part of it.
Yeah, I'm sure.
But then when I started back eating, everything tasted like salt for about a month.
What?
So you don't realize how much salt is in every piece of food that you eat because there's so much in it. And that was the taste that came back. It didn't matter if it was breakfast, lunch, dinner, dessert. All I could taste was salt for a good month.
Now, is that also part of a side effect from chemotherapy?
It might be, but they say too that there's just a lot of sodium in American food. And when you go so long because I went 14 months and I didn't have any salt because all I would drink was water or unsweet tea at that point. And so, but over time, the taste came back a little different than before. And still to this day, things don't taste the way it did before that and before chemo. Like nothing that I remember tastes how it did before I got sick anymore.
Is there something that you enjoy eating now almost as much as before?
Starbucks coffee. I will go and get that every single day because
okay, that's not food, but
no, but that is the one thing that tastes almost exactly the same that I remember growing up. And I don't care if it's $6, $7, $8. I go and get it every morning.
Oh, well, good for you.
But also, eating is my grandma's chicken and dumplings. That's something that it brings back the memories and it tastes just as good as it ever has.
Oh, that's good. I'm so glad to hear that. Wow. So do you finish that clinical trial? Kind of walk us through like what was next.
I'm again a very unique and weird patient because my cancer did not. Usually the clinical trial will either work or cure you, like get rid of the cancer.
Right.
Mine kept it from spreading. So the cancer is still active. It still grows and shrinks some through me. But the clinical trial, which is now an FDA approved drug, keeps it from spreading like it was before. So every year they have to write the drug administration and that I'm just a unique case to where I got to keep on the clinical trial. I'm going on 6 years when the recommended length is only 2 years of it, but it's keeping it from spreading. And at one point, my body will correct itself to where what the drug does won't work, but they're hoping that's years away. And when that happens, they're hoping to be more drugs available at that point.
So when you joined that clinical trial, was it a phase 3 trial at that point?
It's a phase 2 trial.
Oh, it's phase 2. Okay.
Yeah.
So for people who don't know what that means, would you like to tell them the difference between the two?
I know a little bit about the difference of it. I just know there's a lot less known at that point. I know phase 1 is there's virtually nothing known. to from the dosage to the side effects.
Yep.
At the phase 2, they had the dosages down, but they were concerned about, they didn't know how the length of time, the side effects, the effects that'll have on other drugs. So I would get interviews every 7 to 8 days with the doctors and the drug people, just asking me hundreds of questions about what's going on, how's it affecting you in every aspect of life, like from mental to physical.
You know, you touched on something I think is very important that people don't realize about clinical trials is that you often get a lot more attention because the rules and regulations are so strict. And just what you described, I mean, interviews every 7 or 8 days, which sounds exhausting, but it does show that they're constantly paying attention to what's going on.
Yeah, see, that's one thing I thought too. I was a clinical trial, they would just, stick me with the drugs and let me go. And then if something comes up that's bad, they'll come in. But then I realized, like, they spent billions of dollars developing this one drug. I was like, they want to know every little thing that happens or don't happen.
Wow. Oh my goodness. I can only imagine how this has changed your life, but what has been the most significant change for you?
Appreciation. I think before, when I was growing up, and I just kind of expected, to go along life. I was always good at school, good at sports, graduated college. I just kind of went about daily life, and, I appreciated things, but didn't appreciate just the little things in life. And then going through this, I wish I could go back to appreciate waking up and not being in pain one day, or like going through there 14 months, waking up and being able to eat a donut for breakfast or a snack. So now I try to appreciate just the little things that happen, the interactions between people and new friends, because I spent 14 months where I basically didn't see anybody outside of my family, just because mentally I didn't want to, physically I couldn't do anything. So appreciation to the little things that make life worth it.
Oh my God, that's amazing. You're amazing. I'm sure people tell you this all the time. You're amazing. Tell me a little bit about your family. You've mentioned them several times.
Yeah.
Everybody's really close to you. What was this like for them? And also, do you have any brothers or sisters?
Yeah, I have a very big family. I'd say 99% of them live in the same town that we all grew up in. I couldn't have done this without them. Like, my mom has spent all her vacation days that she had built up at work those first 2 years taking me to doctors and chemos and staying at me in the hospital stays. And same with my dad and my step parents and my grandparents. Like, my grandma still to this day won't let me wash my own clothes because she wants to do something for me. So she comes by and gets my clothes to wash.
Oh my goodness.
But
how sweet.
It was hard on them. I could tell, like, especially, I do have brothers. I have 2 full brothers and a sister, and then a bunch of step brothers and a half brother. And it was definitely hard on them and my parents, because we'd never really experienced like a sickness like this in my family. The only person that had really had cancer was my grandma's sister, and she was well into her 80s. So I guess they just didn't really know the process, especially somebody that was, their kid or grandkid.
Yeah.
But I tell everybody they did amazing. Like, I would not be here without them at all.
Let's dig a little deeper. So you have Lynch syndrome.
Yes.
That is genetic.
It is.
Did any of your family get genetic testing?
The way that they described it to all of us, if whoever was over the age of 50 didn't need it because they're already screened for all of the cancers that would go there. And they were all done having kids. But my brothers and my sisters did get tested for it. And it was weird too, because I had 2 brothers that tested negative, and my sister, she didn't test positive for Lynch syndrome, but she has a mutation. They just haven't known what that is yet. They said come back in a couple of years and we'll probably have to be able to tell you what it is. So they said just another weird thing in your family that usually it's 50-50, but they're like, you were the 25% of your siblings that have it.
Yeah. Wow. I know someone sounds like your sister. She doesn't have Lynch syndrome, but she does have
But
some sort of genetic mutation.
yeah,
She's had colonoscopies from a fairly young
yeah,
age. At
yeah.
one point, they actually had her swallow a camera.
It's, but they, both of my brothers and my sister and my half brother, they all get colonoscopies every 2 to 3 years, depending on if they were clean or not. But
Oh,
so
good.
yeah, that was my Christmas present to them in 2015. I was like, y'all get to get these every couple of years now.
Oh my gosh.
But
Wow. Well, talk to me a little bit about outside of your family. What about friends?
yeah, I have a really good set of like best friends. I'm friends with a lot of people, but it takes a lot to get to that like point to where I consider somebody like a best friend, where I trust them with the craziness and the dark thoughts that go into my head all the time through going through this. And they've been there. The ones that live like close to me, check in with me on my hospital stays. They would come and sit with me, check in after chemo treatments, and adjust their plans because, you know, me having cancer for this long, it's changed the way I'm able to go out and do things. So they've all changed their plans anytime we go and do stuff and accommodate me. And that just, it means the world. And then through this cancer journey, and especially the last 2 years, I've developed probably one of the best friends in my whole life who also has cancer. She lives all the way in Arizona, and her family have been great. Just get to
Really?
know them. Yeah. So it's, as bad as cancer is, it has brought like some of the best people into my life.
How did you meet her?
Social media, online stuff, and then just started talking because she was kind of at the end of her chemo and stuff and going through the first stages of that scanxiety when you go back to get that scan the first time. And then it was just organically after that messaging, and then became best friends. I went and met her kids and her husband and everything this past year. So
Oh my God. How was that?
yeah, it was great.
Wow. What about romance? Any romance in your life?
No, I was I was a guy growing up, especially like in my early 20s, where I was like, I'm not gonna, do that because I wanted to just be free. Like I wanted to wake up with the friends and be like, oh, we're going to travel to this town or this city or something and go party for the weekend. And if I couldn't like commit 100%, I didn't think it was right for me or the other person. And then whenever I was ready to kind of take that next step in my life, I got cancer, and now I've not been mentally healthy enough to even think about that until recently. And now it's just kind of a wait and see thing.
So what changed recently?
A lot of therapy and a lot of like opening up and just thinking that I'm at a place in my mental health to where maybe I could try that, and at least brave enough to see.
I'm so glad that you mentioned therapy. Would you mind telling us how long you've been in therapy and what made you
Yeah.
decide to do it?
Yeah, therapy saved my life. I tell people that like know me, especially during that time where I was not eating and I was in bed the whole time, it got really, really dark. Like I had the suicidal thoughts and came very closer than I'd like to admit, but honestly, came close to being done with everything. And it scared me enough I had to realize that I had to have help, that I couldn't do this all by myself. So it started off very slowly, like once a month talking to somebody, and they gave me a little bit of hints to help just better, small things like escaping the life of cancer with whatever makes you happy for that day for 10, 20, 30 minutes at a time. And that just kind of organically led. And now I go and I'm not once every 2 weeks now I talk to my therapist. So
That's awesome. Oh my
yeah,
gosh, you're like making me tear up because I could just feel your authenticity and I can only imagine what those dark moments must have been like.
yeah, they were scary. Like I tell people all the time, I was like, that's probably the most scared I've ever been, over sitting waiting to go to surgery or chemo treatments or anything, realizing that I was having those thoughts and I was getting close to wanting to act on them, that it terrified me enough to break, the whole, especially in the South where I'm from, the whole stigma about therapy and being a man and stuff. That's why I try to work on it now to break that stigma to people, because to me, there's nothing more brave or more showing strength than asking for help when you need it.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, gosh. Well, you shared your worst moment. What has been your best moment so far?
Just realizing that there is still life out there, that I can still have a life. And it's not, I guess, not a single moment in time when I realized that, but over the past, especially 2 years, when I've been out sharing my story and getting feedback from people. Like, I'll get a message and say, "Oh, you talking about getting a colonoscopy, maybe go to the doctor," or, save somebody, or when they were feeling down, it helped them not be so down that day. And just that cumulative effort and realizing that I can still have a purpose. I'm not just a guy that's going to be sick the rest of my life.
That's right. No, you're not. Absolutely not. What is one thing, JJ, you wish you had known at the beginning of this cancer journey?
How tough the mental side of it would be, because all I really knew about cancer was what you've seen on TV and movies. Like, chemo was, you lose your hair and you throw up. Well, I never lost my hair, but I threw up a lot. But I had no idea about the mental side of the whole dealing with cancer and going through chemo and, facing death. So if I would have just had a heads up, or somebody that, would have said, yeah, this is going to knock you for a loop often, maybe I could have been a tiny bit more prepared, or it wouldn't have just shook me so much.
Yeah.
I've been blessed where my oncologist, I mean, he started his own treatment centers now, and he has a therapist there and stuff that wasn't provided for him when he was under the big hospital umbrella.
Oh,
So,
good for him.
Yeah, he's amazing. Unfortunately, he's retiring here in 2 months, but can't be mad at him. He wants to open more treatment centers in Western North Carolina where people aren't having to drive 2 hours to his or the hospital. And he's wanting to get complete imaging at every one of his treatment centers to cut out the HCA hospitals. And so I was like, I can't be mad at you for doing all that.
He's trying to make it better for patients.
Yeah. And I like the oncologist, his partner is going to be mine, and I've met him before. So we're going to be good.
Good. JJ, if you could only do one thing to improve healthcare in the U.S., what would it be and why?
Wow, that's a very complicated question, but just more access into everybody. Like, I know minorities, ethnicities there, but especially to population differences. Like, Asheville is 60,000 people, and that's the big city for me. So we don't have access to all these huge cancer centers and treatment centers that other people do. And I just think that so many things get lost from the 5 hours away to Duke or Chapel Hill to me up here in the mountains. So if everybody just had more access.
Yeah. Oh, gosh. I so agree with you. I don't think very often some of the people that I speak with and work with, I don't think they have that understanding at all.
Yeah.
They assume that everyone is just treated at an NCI cancer center. Like, they can't fathom that you don't live in a big city where there's all these options, and so it's a bit frustrating.
I've realized that too. Is the more I've got to talk to people that are, especially like people in healthcare and stuff, they're like, you just go to a big cancer center. I'm like, I have treatment with about the same people every 3 weeks for about 6 months until they're done. I was like, people at big cancer centers, they might see the same person once or twice, or, it's like, I know everybody from the receptionist to all the doctors and the nurses.
Wow. Okay. Well, are you ready to lighten things up and do the Thriver Rapid Fire?
Of course.
Beach, desert, or mountains?
Beach. Live in the mountains, so definitely would need something different. And I've always loved the beach.
Beach Boys, Beatles, or Rolling Stones?
The Beatles.
Beatles are
classic.
They are indeed. What is one word that best describes you?
Persistent.
That was, I kid you not, the first word that popped into my head for you. So before you die, what is the last song you want to hear?
Oh, let's see. Beverly Hills by Weezer. Just because of the memory that it brings up of being in high school before my senior year. Not the best song, not my favorite song, but just the memories associated with that song.
Isn't it amazing the memories that music and smells bring
Yeah.
up?
Totally.
Yeah.
It's insane sometimes.
Well, this one might be tricky, but what about the last meal you want to eat?
Chicken and dumplings from my grandma.
The last person or people you want to see?
I would say everybody in my family and my group of best friends, without a doubt.
And the last words you will speak?
It was a good run.
And aside from Cancer U, what is one resource you would recommend for cancer patients and caregivers? And also, if you're open to it, please tell people how they can get in touch with you.
Yeah, the resources I would recommend is kind of a group of 3 colorectal cancer organizations, Fight CRC, the
Okay.
Colon Club, and Colon Cancer Coalition. They each kind of do something different. One is more where work on legislation. One is, for young colon cancer patients, and others to help people learn about the importance of colonoscopies.
Okay. Would you send me the link to the Colon Club? Because that one I don't
Yes.
know. Okay.
Yes, I will.
And how can people get in touch with you?
I'm on all social media. My Instagram is where I do most of like my journey through cancer and about my life, and it is JJ5145.
Okay, JJ5145.
Yes.
What does the 5145 stand for? Anything?
It's always been in high school. 5 was my football number, and 14 was a basketball number. And when I had to start doing logins and passwords, that was always something. And now, earlier this year, a Star Wars. I'm a huge Star Wars fan, but one of the authors of the book, she's been following my jersey, and she named a droid in her book after my Instagram account name.
No.
Yeah.
Oh, what was that like?
That was insane because I've told a lot of people that Star Wars is that one thing that I found when I was sick, and it was my escape, watching the movies, reading the books. And she had started following me, and then I got an autographed book from her, and on the first page it said, "Turn to page 18. There's a surprise," and the droid's name was named after that. And it was a shock and amazing and everything.
Now, I have to ask before we wrap up, did you go back and watch the Star Wars from my day where it was, I guess, episodes 4, 5, and 6 or whatever?
Oh yeah, all of them. I have those all on my. Those are the only physical DVDs that I own anymore.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Actually, just got a tattoo the other day of stuff with Star Wars.
Oh, really? What is it?
Yeah. It's kind of, I don't know if you can see
For
it.
people?
Yeah, it's the symbol for the Rebel Alliance and Jedi Order, and then in the Star Wars language it says "Never tell me the odds," and the 3 letters are KFG, which is a saying in one of my men's groups. Keep effing going through like chemo, and then there's little 68 blue dots kind of in the white space, and each one of those represents somebody that was like really close and meant something to me that has died of cancer in the last 7 years.
Oh, that is so beautiful. Wow. Oh, JJ, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story.
Well, thank you. It's been a pleasure, and enjoyed doing it.